Who knew that Sony would make a multi-platform game? Well, it's Sony Music Entertainment if you want to get into technicalities. Not to mention, the game is a spiritual successor to Advance Wars. Screw that, forget about Wargroove. This game gets a solid 10 out of 10. Whoa. I'm jumping the gun again. I need to keep my fanboyism in check. Let's get on with the actual review of Tiny Meadow for the Nintendo Switch. Now, I'm a big fan of strategy RPGs, you can't tell. Games like Advance Wars, Fire Emblem, and Sid Meier's Civilizations have been a huge part of my life as a gamer, and Tiny Meadow looks no exception. It already gives me the feeling that I've just popping in Advance Wars into my Game Boy Advance. Tiny Meadow takes inspiration heavily from the Advance Wars series, but puts a little bit of their own spin on it. Unlike Advance Wars, which doesn't take itself too seriously with its comedic war-based type of story, until you get to Advance Wars Days of Ruin with this post-apocalyptic setting, but that's a discussion saved for another video. Tiny Meadow opts to have a serious storyline, which involves the assassination of Artemisia's king and colonel. The nation of Zapong are the masterminds, and this, of course, a war happens. I mean, what do you expect? It's not like they're going to shake hands and sing Kumbaya to one another. On to the story. Nathan Grease is the lieutenant of the Artemisian army, and he is left in charge of the entire army since his colonel died. It is your job as commanding officer to guide Artemisia to victory in their time of need. Now, right at the bat, I should mention this. I am playing this on Nintendo Switch for its portability. However, this game is out for the PS4 and PC. From the research I did for the Switch version in dock mode, it is 1080p while it's 720p in portable mode and 30 FPS on both sides. Just want to throw that out there for the people who care about that type of stuff. Let me make this clear, I don't care about graphics. If the gameplay and the story is good, I'm going to enjoy the shit out of it. Then again, 60 FPS would be kinda nice to implement to a game now that you think about it. Viewer beware, you're going to hear me compare this game to Advance Wars lots of times, because let's be real, the game is just like Advance Wars to its core. So your basic gameplay is that you have your troops arranged in a grid-like map. Turns are split into days where each side makes multiple moves. These moves can consist of moving your troops around, lining them up to battle, locking onto a new enemy, and so forth. One new aspect that Advance Wars doesn't have is the assault system, a risky move that allows you to push off enemies off a tile, but at the cost of the enemy firing first. So make sure you do it with a troop that has a lot of defense. This is very useful because it can stop an enemy from taking over a building that can add to their fronts or take over a factory. Another tactic that Tiny Meadow has, unlike Advance Wars, is the focus fire. Here's how it works. Once you come into range with an enemy, instead of attacking them, select lock on. This sets the unit ready to fire once you give the green light. Once you line up all your troops on a single enemy, click focus fire and let the damages rack up. It is really useful when you're going against an army unit that is tough to take down. Speaking of units, there are many different types of units used in this game. You got your normal foot soldiers that come in two flavors, Riflemen and Lancers. Riflemen are your run-off-the-mill units that are cheap to produce. They are best used for taking and holding strategic locations. Lancers, on the other hand, is a rifleman with a bazooka. They can handle lightly armored vehicles due to the rockets they have in hand. They too can also take control of buildings and factories. Some other foot troops that are not present in Advance Wars, like the Sniper unit and the Spec Ops unit, which is a weaker artillery unit and upgraded rifleman respectively. Then of course you got your ground vehicles ranging from scout vehicles to heavy tanks. Normal stuff you see until you make it to the radar unit, which is all they do, detect enemies that are not visible due to the fog of war. Even though they pose no real threat, they can be used in conjunction with the artillery units in order to attack enemies outside of your visual range. Now this I can get behind since the fog of war mechanic can be a double-edged sword. On one side, it adds an element of surprise which keeps you on your toes. On the other hand, you would never know the number of enemies that are on the map until you come into close range and it's far too late to retaliate. It is recommended to tread lightly or come with enough firepower to defend yourself in those situations. In addition to these units, you are given hero units to use, basically a much power version of a specific unit type, and can only be summoned once per battle. Even though hero units are by themselves, they can basically be a one-man army that can wreak havoc on the enemy. At the end of each mission, you are rated in terms of points. These points are awarded for various things done on the battlefield, such as killing enemies, capturing buildings, and anything that benefits your outcome. However, you can lose points throughout battle too. When your troops die, lose buildings, or just take too long on the mission, will deduct points from your final score. In the end, you are rated with a gold, silver, or bronze award depending how well you did on each mission. In turn, this adds replay value for you as the player to come back and get a better rank. Across all 14 missions, there are a handful of secret missions that can be unlocked by fulfilling certain requirements during combat, like finding labs during the missions. I haven't unlocked all of them, but for the ones I played, they are much more of a challenge compared to the story-based maps. One thing I should point out is that it's more of a subjective viewpoint now that you think about it, rather than objective viewpoints. The difficulty in this game is fine as you play it through. It has an ascending difficulty curve, so as you go further in the game, the difficulty will be bumped up a bit. However, there will be a couple of missions that have somewhat of a weird difficulty curve. I know I'm not the best player of strategy games, some of my moves can be sloppy at times. However, when I am thrown into a situation where I need to survive for a couple of turns, it seems off-putting. Maybe I'm just bad at managing myself with limited resources. Another criticism I have of this game is that the cutscenes tend to be very long-winded. I clocked at least between 5 to 8 minutes worth of cutscenes before and after missions, and it's nice that it gives us background, but some of that stuff can be cut down to at least 3 minutes. At least the game gives you a fast forward button to go through the cutscene faster, but this game would have heavily benefited with a skip button. Since I'm not that emotionally invested into the story, I click fast forward most of the time so I can at least use context clues to know what is going on. Plus, it doesn't help that some of these characters lack some personality. I don't know if it's because of the voice acting or because of its long-winded cutscenes. Hell, it could be both. Tiny Metal is also limited with their objectives to win. You will get the usual defeat all enemies on the screen or capture the enemy HQ. Capturing the enemy HQ is the objective I tend to go for because once you capture the HQ, all buildings the enemy captures now belong to you, and of course the points start rolling down. Some missions have survival mode, where you are supposed to not let your troops die for a certain amount of turns, but that is only far and few. It would be nice to have a mix of objectives like kill the boss troop or escape the enemy type missions, something that could keep me going. Now, this one glaring issue that I noticed when I was playing the game is the fact that some assets look very blurry. Like I said in the beginning of the video, I don't care about graphics, but I want to point this out to the people that care. For what I see, it looks like the developer had to cut some corners when porting the game to the Switch, and of course the troops in some battle scenes look very blurry, and it's quite noticeable on a big TV like mine. Now this comes to the question if this game is really in 1080p to begin with. Now in Advance Wars, where they have a war room, Tiny Metal has it with skirmish mode. It is meant to keep you busy until the multiplayer comes. Oh, did I also forget to mention that this game has an online multiplayer? Because it does, and it hasn't been implemented into the game yet. You can click on the option on the main menu, but you'll be held back saying that it will come soon. Expect an update to come out in order to fully implement multiplayer. Going back to skirmishes though, you are given 50 missions in total in this mode, each mission having their own different scenario. Whether you are playing on a small map that you can clear in 4 to 6 days, or maps that are just out there to punish you for every little move you do. I have only done like 10 of these maps so I can get a feel out of it. One added bonus is that I'm glad is gone is that the fact that CPU can cheese its way to victory, and that is what makes war rooms so frustrating in the original Advance Wars. Cause once a CPU activates your CEO power, that clears out most of your army, you just want to punt your GPA across that room like an NFL player. So overall, what are my final thoughts of this game? Even with its flaws, Tiny Metal has a good amount of content to play around with. A 6-hour story with some extra skirmishes in the game. You are looking at about a game that gives you about 30 hours experience in total. However, things can turn people off is how cutscenes are a bit deflating for a person to go through, and its lack of variety and objectives can make the game feel like a chore. Who do I recommend this game for? I recommend this game to people who have experience going through strategy games since it's an homage to games like Advance Wars and Famicom Wars. I can't recommend this game confidently to newcomers. In my opinion, get a copy of Advance Wars Dual Strike on the Wii U eShop or Fire Emblem Echoes if you want to start around there. But like I said, its flaws shouldn't detract you from the game that has this much content. So overall, give this game a try if you need to. This is Juggernaut, and thank you for watching my review of Tiny Metal for the Nintendo Switch. See you next video.